Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good? Everything is good here? Good and hot? Hot. Let me tell you, I grew up in South Florida, which is tropical, and it's hot and sticky and humid. But this week, and I'm in North Florida now, it's really funny because I've got a temperature drop of like 25 degrees. Usually that's a lot between daytime and nighttime. But I'm getting projected temps in the 90s, like high 90s. Okay, that's not that common. So anyway, that's my point, is it's good and hot. I mean, everybody, the animals. I've got fountains, because I have some wells out there, and I've put like solar fountains just for the animals. So I don't want anybody to die on me. Not for my animals. I'm talking about the wildlife, because where I live, I got a bunch of wildlife all over the place. And so I have one of these solar fountains that circulates the water, which, by the way, I got to constantly be out there. I put it like underneath the pump, the hand pump, because yes, that's Marlene's thing. I have other wells, but anybody that has a well knows that if your electricity goes out, guess what? So does your water source. But so me, I have a hand pump connected to one of my wells. So anyway, getting back. Yeah, I have to fill it up every day, just so my guineas, everybody, the birds, the snakes, I've caught a few snakes out there, everybody and their cousin goes over, which was the original intent of the of putting the that solar. It's like a big dish and it's got a little thing, and believe it or not, for a solar thing, it does pretty well. And anyway, getting back to the original, it's hot. Yeah, it is. And I've even got fans for my birds outside on the screen porch. It's like, oh, my animals are so pampered. I've got ceiling fans, and it gets so hot, especially when the sun sets, that I've even got one of these fans that just goes across. This is because you can tell my birds are looking at me like, "Hey, lady," and I've got them in a shade. I don't by any chance but anyway, yeah, it's that kind of weather. And like I said, I'm complaining about the heat, and then when the winter comes around, it's like it's really cold. But anyway, yeah, getting anything done, and believe me, I've done things out there in the heat, and I need like a recovery day. The next day, I'm like, give me a couple of Tylenols, and I'm just gonna sit here. Basically, it limits you to like really early morning, or just about now, like around 7 or 8, once that sun dips, before I go out there and I do stuff. I've had to, let's do it this way. I mow my lawn because I have acreage. So, and especially now I mow my lawn in sections. Like, how much can I do in 2 hours when the sun is going down? So yeah, because the heat is like, God, it's hard on a person. Let me tell you something. And like I said, I'm no wimp when it comes to the heat. At least I wasn't. Like, I grew up in that. But God, it's hot. Or maybe I have become. No, but anyway. Yeah. It's really funny. My dogs, I open the door. They run outside, and usually have to get back in here. Come on, inside, especially the first thing in the morning. I don't have to do that. They go out there, they do it, and they come right back in because it's so hot. So yeah. And also, it's really funny because I've got it on pause. You can't see it here, but I've been doing one of these 1970s, 1980s nostalgia trip to these old classic horror movies. which, believe it or not, I mean, we look at them sometimes because we're so used to all the FX and CGI and all this. But some of these, I love these movies because they're campy, but they're great. I'm watching one that's from 1980. It's called Without Warning. Believe it or not, it's got decent actors. It's got Jack Palance, Martin Landau, and a couple of other people there. And it's, of course, it's about UFOs, and I'm thinking to myself, that was 1980. We're still going round and round with this thing about UFOs and things like this, and extraterrestrial life, and it's and even then they had their conspiracy theories about, like, why, like, the government, why don't they do anything? There's one lady saying, hey, if there's extraterrestrials out there, I'm not going to give the movie away, why haven't the government done anything? And one of the characters, Martin Landau, was like, because they never do anything about anything. And I'm like, man, it's 45 years later and we're still saying the same thing when it comes to UFOs and to extraterrestrials. But yeah, I love these old movies, nostalgia. Yeah, simple plot line, but even, and it's really funny because these better actors, they can take even a simple plot line and make it good, make it interesting. So if you guys have a chance, I think it's on YouTube. It's called Without Warning from 1980. Yeah, yeah. Every once in a while, I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me go back to basics. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. And the good part is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural. She's been here. This is her third time. Her name is Tui Snider, and she's an author and speaker who is passionate about exploring cemeteries, writing books, leading tours, and giving presentations with an eye for quirky detail and a touch of humor. She has been featured by a variety of outlets, including Coast to Coast AM, ABC, NBC, Lifehack, The Telegraph, and many more. All right. She travels. That's not only local. She travels the world exploring historic cemeteries. Then shares what she learns through her blog spot, lectures, photos, and tours. And she's also written a dozen best-selling books, including Understanding Cemetery Symbols, 6 Feet Under Texas, and DFW Scavenger. And of course, you could visit her on her website and probably Amazon, but we're going to get that on the credits of the show, and we'll ask her later on where we can find all of her books. Help me welcome her. How are you doing today, Tui?
Oh, great. I can relate to you on the heat.
Ah, man, let
I'm
me
here
tell
in
you something.
Texas, so yeah.
Because you're in Texas, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How's it? Yeah, it's
And
hot, right?
it's getting right up there. It's creeping right up. It's like almost triple digits. We're like 97
Yeah,
or
right, right,
something.
right, right. That's
But
what I'm talking about.
but we just had these storms, like really bad tornadoes came through, and
Yes,
um, like my uh, um, daughter and son-in-law, they lost power, the grandkids, for like almost a week. It
I've
took
been
that
there, done
long,
that.
and
Been
there's
there, done that.
no obviously everything in the refrigerator went bad, and they didn't have any air conditioning, so they had to, luckily they stayed with another relative who did. But I saw some pictures of some of the hail that fell that was really quite large. I
Oh,
mean,
they
just
had hail too?
spiky hail that fell in some places.
Wow.
We just had heavy storms, but and then it just the aftermath of that is it's so humid. You feel like you've just stepped out of the shower. Like you open
Yes.
the front door and it's like this blast of like
Yes, it's like a furnace. You open the door to it like the oven or something.
well, it's
Yes.
like, to me, it reminds me when I step out of the shower and the bathroom is all humid. That feeling,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, but I'm stepping outside. It shouldn't be this way. Blah. Anyway,
Yes.
I've heard good things about those solar fountains. I should probably
Let me
get
tell you
some.
something. They're really, since it's basically all it does is like circulate, but it's great because
It
I'm
attracts
not, my
wildlife.
outlet is far away, and this is like in the middle of the field where I have the hand pump on the well.
Uh-huh.
And basically it's like a big dish, and it's made so it's got like a little goldfish perched on the edge with a hose. And you just put this little solar panel right next to it. It all comes together and it circulates the water around. And of course I have to go
Yeah.
out there and pump it. But basically I've got a bunch of wildlife that and insects and everything because I watch it. Besides
Mm-hmm.
my own that this is there's because for example, I want to say this is like the sixth day we haven't gotten any rain.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Yeah.
So all the
So
normal stuff that
dry
you
where
get
you are.
puddles or stuff
Mhm.
like that, there's none. So yeah, I'm always
Yeah.
doing that because I think, man, it's hot in there
I
and
know.
no
I'm thinking
water.
about the animals too. We have two little ponds in our backyard, and we have
Okay.
quite a few frogs and toads out
Mm-hmm.
there. And but we also have a bird bath. But the birds like different types of bird baths.
Yes.
I'm like, so I need to get like different depths. for them.
Yes.
And but I've seen hawks out there bathing in ours before.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's thirsty. I want to make sure they can all get access to it. So
Right, right. That's the way I look at it. That's the way
yeah,
I look at it
like
because it's like, and yeah, no, no, no. The heat's been, and I don't know about what happened with your daughter and your son-in-law, but even if you have your water sourced from, let's say, the city or the county,
yeah.
when the electricity goes out, the water heater goes with it.
Yes, I
So
thought. I wonder if there's a
even if you
boil
can take a
water alert.
shower,
Mhm.
it's cold water. I mean, that's because of the hurricanes. Since I grew up in South Florida,
Oh yeah,
I
you
I know
know.
what it's like to be a week without. And luckily, I had a one of those smaller generators, and but that's only good to like plug in the refrigerator
Yeah.
and maybe make some coffee, but forget the AC and forget all the other stuff. So
Hmm.
I get it. She's
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I can top this here. It's not a competition, but I'll just tell you one time
Go ahead.
I lived on a little island for 5 years, and that only had a population of between 7 and 9 people year round. And it was, yeah, there was no, we didn't have, we had just a generator, and
Okay.
we were working as caretakers for the people who had built the Space Needle. And so
Okay.
if they had people living in the little caretakers area, it was lowered their insurance rates and whatever else. So this one year, there was this tremendous in the winter. We could
Okay.
only to get off the island and come in and do our shopping. We had to tow our boat down to a ramp and launch it. It was a big
Okay.
procedure. Sometimes you'd get down there, and by the time you got down there, the water would be too rough to go. Well, anyway,
Okay.
huge windstorm. Like we had a wind gauge, and it just froze solid at one point and quit giving us
Oh,
the.
it was that
It was
cold?
that cold. Yeah, it was cold. There was cold snap. This was up in Washington State, and
Oh my God. Okay, you just gave me a good. Okay.
so many trees fell down between our house and the boat launch that it took us 2 months to get off the island. And so during that time, we did not have running water. We had a
Oh my
stove.
God.
There was no internet. There was no cell phones. We only had a marine radio that we would monitor every day between 4 and 5. And so, yeah, my ex-husband and I, the guy I was married to at that point, it took us 2 months to saw our way down to the to the
So
boat.
let me ask. Luckily, I imagine you guys had like food stuff prepared.
We did. I mean, I would shop for like a month at a time and a garden
Okay.
that I canned, and I was pretty well stocked up, but we really were low on certain things.
I
And
bet.
at one point, my stepdaughter and I was, just craving like something else besides all the beans and rice that I had, and
Right.
we had
Right.
some friends. There were some cabins there that people only would come out to for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really nice couple, the McCarthys. I'm sure I don't know if they even remember me now. We actually we went
It's
for a
like
walk
I'm
and we
sorry.
broke into their cabin, and I found like some canned peaches and some candy bars and just some things. And we, replaced it like later. I went over the first time they came out with a bag of things, and I told them, I'm so bad it broke in. And they were like, oh my God, you should have taken more. They didn't care. They were like, next
Of
time
course.
something
Yeah.
happened. But I mean, it just, oh, I tell you, I appreciated those canned peaches, man. They were like freaking ambrosia. We had
Can
had
you
the most.
imagine? Of course, when you don't have nothing that it's like, who cares about carbs or about, how
Oh
everybody's
yeah.
reading labels? It's like, who cares?
Oh yeah, and then there were some candy bars too, and those were really great.
Sure.
I had it on the cutting board. I was cutting it into slices, and we were just like enjoying those candy bars. I don't think anyone's
Let me
ever,
tell you something. Were you in any danger of those trees falling on where you were living on the structure or no? Or
Yeah,
you just lucky?
we did have one fall on the cabin, the log cabin that our boss owned. That was one time. I don't know if that was that particular storm. I was out, actually. I was going up to check on the chickens, and a branch that's about, as big around as my head fell
Uh-huh.
in between, just right in front of me. A big thump on the ground.
That could have people don't understand. Since I have very tall trees, those branches could kill somebody easily.
I,
If they
I,
hit
I,
you on the head,
I ran around. I just waited. I never went out in a big wind again. That was like a learning
yes.
experience. It was kind of like good. It was just teaching me like you don't do that, because I felt the thump of it in my feet. That bam hit the ground. I was like, oh, that could have been me.
Yeah, yeah. I've been sometimes not even, and it's really funny, but sometimes it's not even windy. It's just sometimes I guess branches get like they're a little bit weak, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden they just fall. And I've been sitting here, and all of a sudden I
you
hear
hear it.
thump, and I go, okay,
It'll
that was a
happen in the
branch out there.
snow up there. We didn't get snow a lot, and so the ice on the branches, and I remember even that being dangerous, and hearing the crack and thump. at one point, realizing I don't want to go out now either.
So
So
let me ask you something. When you guys sought off, what did you ask for somebody to come get you, or did you have your boat, or what happened?
yeah, we had our boat and we finally just were able to launch it. But like I said, it just took 2 months to saw our way down, clear the road. We could only use a chainsaw and clear so many trees. I mean, that's pretty heavy duty work. I was in pretty good shape
Yeah.
at that
Yes.
point.
Yes.
And yeah, and then we just had to wait for decent weather. What time of year was it? September. I think being that far north too, there were only certain times a day that
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't be on the water at night. And but nights when you live that far north in the winter, it's like by 3:30 if you're not on the water, it's going to be dark by 4, because you're that far north.
Wow.
And so there was a very narrow window. You have to watch the water. It was a really great experience, very special
And I bet your husband was like,
experience.
I better hurry up because pretty soon she's going to be looking at me and going, yeah,
Yeah.
hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. Oh,
Like,
I
what do
know.
they call it? Long pig or something like that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, yeah. You think about. I know we would always make jokes about The Shining when people
Yeah.
had for
Yes.
a while. Like I
But let
think
me, and I imagine what you had a water source there on the island, a fresh water source.
we had a well that I in a
Okay.
bucket, and I would pull the water, and then
Let me tell
I
you
would
something.
strain the twigs out of it, and then I
When
would
you
boil it.
have experiences like that, you have a different perspective of the good old days
Oh
when
yeah.
people had to do that. You're like, yeah,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
right,
Totally, totally, totally. Yes. I mean, actually, and then I have to strain the sticks out of it and then put it in the water and then boil it. I was just getting like a sponge bath for 2 months. I mean, that's all we did. We managed,
sure.
I would boil for my stepdaughter so that she could get an actual bath. But the rest of, it was like for us, we were like, could hardly wait to. I took a shower after 2 months. It felt so good
So
in
I
a
take it
bath.
what I'm gonna ask because I got. Did you guys go back
Go back? What do you
to
mean?
to to as caretakers
Oh, when? You mean we were there for
to that
5
island
I haven't
once?
been back. I haven't been back. My stepdaughter was lucky enough to go back. We were there for 5 years to the day. It's just how it worked out, weirdly.
You were there that long.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
And a homeschool,
wow.
I just every year would ask my stepdaughter, do you want to be homeschooled again? Are you ready to go to public school? What do you
Mm-hmm.
think? And then when she was, I think 12, she just was like, yeah, I think I want to try going to public school now. So then we just moved ashore. And then I opened a coffee house, and that's what I did for a living. But
I mean, and how? Let me ask you, how far were you from? How far did you have to travel to get to like regular land, to the mainland or
it was
whatever?
about
What?
45 minutes on the water.
Okay, all right,
Which, but I mean, it was a whole day thing. So, like,
sure.
I mean, we were going to go to the store. I mean, it would take me hours to get my shopping list together because maybe I would be shopping in the winter. I'd definitely be shopping for the whole month. People would look at me come around the corner
Wow.
with this huge cart,
It's like how many?
and they'd be like, "You're going to eat all that?"
Yeah,
Like,
like, okay.
oh,
But that is what a great story to you.
well,
That it's like,
I got to
oh,
tell you this one bit because it always gets me. One time, we had to go. It was like 3 o'clock. It was going to be getting dark, and they were scanning all my items, and all of a sudden, I feel my face turning red because I realized I just used my last check at the hardware store to buy some sort of piece of hardware or seeds or something. I forget what it was I had bought. And I'm like, oh, and I'm just turning bright red. And the checker kind of notices, or the bagger back when he noticed, this really friendly bagger noticed. And I told him, oh my God, guys, we're going to have to put all this. It was like $300 worth of food, whatever. It was huge, it was the
right.
whole month of food. We're going to have to put this all back because I wrote my last check. And he goes, nope, I just got paid yesterday. I'm covering it. You can just you can send me a check or just pay me when you get back to
Wow.
town. Here's my address. I'm like, but you don't even really know me. He goes, I know you. I see you in here all the time. I know you're just buying food. You're not trying to scam me. Anyway, I could have cried. It was the nicest thing. We needed that food, and we had
Yes.
a storm, and I wasn't able to get back to him for like a month. He was out that money until I came back and gave him that money. It was one of the nicest things I think
That
that
was very, very kind
anyone's
of that
ever done
man.
for me. I was like,
That's like, I'm telling you, what is it? The kindness of strangers?
he deserves a medal. It was so nice. I really appreciated
People,
it.
it's, that is, let me, and I imagine what would happen in the case of an emergency, like a medical emergency. Would you guys raise somebody on the
Oh,
radio or what?
Yeah, so when that happens, you get onto the frequency, which is channel 19, or it was at the time, and you say
Mm-hmm.
your name. So your name, like your name, our boat was called Margaret S for some reason. So you go, you hail the Coast Guard, and you say Coast Guard, Coast Guard, Coast Guard. You have to say it 3 times. It's like a magical spell. This is the Margaret S, Margaret S, Margaret S. You have to hail it, and you say this is an
Right.
emergency, and if it wasn't too windy, they could
Yes.
have a small plane come out and
Okay.
pick you up. But if it was over 30 miles an hour or it was coming from the wrong direction, forget it. So that always, we never would use the chainsaw or like, split
Anything that could
heavy
be an
wood.
accidental anything.
Things that might be extra risky, we never did it if it was too windy, because if we didn't
You
think we
know
could
what?
call it,
I
it
think
would
that
take
is,
you an
I'm
hour and a
telling
half.
you, see, that's the kind of planning that people don't realize because of our everyday lives. Because now you can dial 911
Uh-huh.
and you got, help,
Well,
whatever it is.
I never
And people don't
realized.
realize that in those scenarios, you got to think about what you just described.
Oh yeah, I never realized that I had that in the back of my head. I'm not like some risk seeker who's bungee jumping with flaming torches or anything. I mean, I'm fairly just normal, but I always had in the back of my head that I could call 911. And
Sure.
when I was out there, I just found myself being that extra bit cautious. I think the very first time it happened, I think I was using a knife rather hastily, and I cut myself, and I realized, whoa, good thing that wasn't too deep. And after that, I never cut myself again. I was actually, just something changed. I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
My ex-husband, though, he got his finger caught in a belt sander, and like I
Oh,
could see the bone, I could see the tendon. I mean, I was
oh,
like, it was yucky, 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 but it was an anatomy lesson. I learned that I don't faint when those things happen. It was good
right.
to know that I just kind of go, okay, I'm freaking out inside, but I'm like, well, let's do
Yes.
this. I have this really weird, calm voice. Oh, here's the one thing I learned about me too, is that when I'm in that adrenaline like that, I get the worst BO ever. Like I stink
You know
so bad,
what? Yes, I've
and I
noticed what you mean. It's like we put out a different sweat from
yeah.
like sweaty hot. It's like
Oh yeah.
sweaty adrenaline. I'm really scared. Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until I was at the hospital and I'm filling out the paperwork because it took an hour and a half to get him. And I had to page the thing. I had to have a plane fly out. Luckily, everything aligned. It was a little bit of a bumpy ride, but it took like an
Okay.
hour and a half. That was the fastest, I think. And we were amazed we got in to the hospital. I'm filling out the paperwork and I'm thinking, whoa, someone around here really stinks. And I'm like, oh no, it's me.
And
And
it's like, yeah,
I
wait
did
a
not
minute.
even know I could smell that bad. And the same
Yes.
thing happened like I don't know, a year later or something. I had to take my stepdaughter to the hospital. And once again, I'm like, phew, I'm like, oh, no, I know it's me this
It's right.
time.
Yes. Yes. People don't realize that there's other chemicals that go off in your body under
Mhm.
stress
Oh, yeah.
that give you a different odor than when you're just sweating because it's hot.
Oh,
Yes, that's
it's
happened
a
to me.
different thing.
Yeah.
I've just, yeah, it's bizarre.
That is such an excellent story
I know. That's
because,
actually a book I would like. That was the first book I
yeah,
ever wanted to write. Was about my time on the island. And when I tell people about it, they're always interested in it. But when I pitched it to an editor, she told me like, "Oh, well, you're not famous, and all what happened out there." And I said, "Well, I had all these experiences. I almost got blown up. I had all these things
yeah.
happen." She goes, "Yeah, but you're not famous. You didn't overcome like some sort of disease while you're out there." I'm like, "No." She goes, "Well,
What?
if you'd had breast cancer, or if you're a famous person, maybe people would want to read that." I'm like, she just made me sound like and she goes, "People, and you're she made it sound like I was being, oh, your
Like, who
little life."
cares? Like, you're just an ordinary, normal person,
I was like, I was saying, I think that's part of the appeal. Was
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
I was a stepmom, and I kind of go from the beginning of the book. My stepdaughter didn't like me much, and by the end, she's like, "Can I call you mom?" And I thought that was a neat
Yeah.
transition. She's like, "Oh, that's just too little of a story. Your little life isn't really going to,
Oh man,
it
whoever
made
told
me
you
feel
that.
like I was." But now I look back on it, and I'm like, I think that I should get that book
Yes,
out.
yes, you should. You should,
Because I think,
because
um,
people, don't get me wrong. I know there's people, there's a prepping communities and there's other
yeah.
communities and like I said, not like you, but I already had a flavor of being cut off by certain things, and people have no idea really what it's like to, like what you were saying, that you have to think 3 steps ahead. Like,
Mhm.
am I going to do this today? But let me check the weather because fill in the blank.
and the weather is more, there's more to the weather than, oh, should I bring a
Yes.
sweater or not? It's like,
Uh-huh.
gee, well, and you can't,
Can a
you have to
plane
get,
land? Let me ask you. And what were they coming in? Were they taxing, or what kind? Or did you guys have a runway, or was it
we had a grass runway. It was like a 1,500-foot runway. It had little
Okay.
dog leg. So small planes could land there.
Yeah.
Okay, especially if they landed, if the wind was going one way and they landed the other, they wouldn't stall out. But it wasn't, but it had a lot of limitations. Yeah, but yeah,
Wow.
definitely. It was just different when you're looking at the weather or looking at the water and thinking about,
Yeah.
people look, if they think if one thing that gets me is if it's sunny out, but there's high waves, people just think, oh, it's a nice day. I'm like, it's the water you got to think about. If you've
Yes,
got
the waves.
people are just, the minute they see sun, they think, oh, sunny day, all's good. That could be very dangerous water to be in. You could have a
I can
gray day
imagine.
with calm water and be like, oh, this is the best water. But people are like, oh, it looks, it's gray.
Oh
Must
my
be
God, it's
scary.
such a. Let's go
You know,
boating. It's like
yeah,
no.
yeah, exactly. I know people are, I learned a lot from that experience, I got to say.
You should. I think you need to revisit that idea about writing that book, Tweet, because I think it would be a great book.
I have most of it done. I just should go back to. I kept a diary anyway, so it's
Oh
very
my
fun.
God.
And I practice writing. I've always wanted to be a writer, so I would practice things that I'd write up scenarios, things that had happened. I'd rewrite them and as writing practice all the time. So
Let me tell you
yeah,
something. I'm gonna show you something that I bought. It's called. This is a book. Just on the topic of what you're saying. It's called.
yeah.
Wait a minute. God, this. It's. I
Oh, I know.
know.
It's called Blair. Yeah, no,
Yeah, I know.
I
Wait,
know.
hold on.
Oh, it'll
Marlene.
come. It'll come.
No, wait.
Oh, let's see.
Survival medicine.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
You know why I have this book? Because I'm always fearing like if I ever need, because I mean, I had kids and I know how to do like little things, but and I know how to do CPR and all that normal stuff. But I said,
Yeah,
you know what? I need to have that just in case I'm in a situation where I need to know what I'm doing.
yeah.
You
That sounds
know?
like a good book. I like, all those life skills, all those things that we really should be learning more about.
Yeah. Which is the core. Like what I was saying, a lot of times when we look at the good old days, we don't realize that in the good old days there was a lot of stuff that people had to be fast on their feet about
Hmm.
handling situations.
Oh yeah.
You didn't
Uh,
have the luxury of, calling, like I said, 911
oh
or
yeah.
or let me go on the internet and look that up.
Oh no. No, we had this one when I lived on the island. We just had this one medical book. I forget what it was called. It was this big blue medical book, and if I had something wrong, I was trying to figure out if we were sick.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
tried to diagnose from that. I mean, I didn't
Sure.
have Google.
Sure.
Um, yeah,
There's
there's
a lot of
times.
illnesses that sometimes mimic each other with their, especially their early symptoms that you're like,
Mhm.
what is this? It could be this, but it could be that.
Oh
But
yeah,
yep. And some stuff is serious and others is not. It's like, okay, I don't want to get crazy.
true, true. You don't want to be but anyway.
But let's get on. You were right before we started to tape. I had asked you because you were away for 9 months,
Hmm.
visiting all over the place.
I didn't give birth. It sounds like I was away for 9 months, Mister. No, no.
It was like, but and I asked you because we were like I know that once upon a time for people of a certain age, cemeteries were rarely closed or locked down, even in an urban setting, because
Mhm.
most people thought, who would want to go into the cemeteries? Like now that's changed a lot, and like you were saying in the cities. But what did you find when you were? Well, tell us about your travels and what you found and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, yeah, I was like, yeah, I was telling you earlier that I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I traveled for 9 months. It started with I went up to Washington State for my dad's memorial, actually, and
Okay.
then my husband and I hopped on a ship, and we went around the world actually, and we went around
Okay.
Japan and the South Pacific, and then we went to Romania for a couple of weeks because we have friends there now that some really nice Romanian couple that we met while we were traveling last year, and they took us on this whirlwind tour of Romania that was phenomenal. And then I
Wow.
got home, and then my family came for like 10 days, and then they just left a couple of days ago. So I'm
And then you're
sort of,
doing my interview, and
I'm like,
then
but I feel like I
Twee's
haven't
gonna take some recovery days. Like, don't talk to me.
exactly.
Don't call me.
I feel like I have to digest. I haven't digested. Like I have so much. So what I do, like when I travel, each month that I'm gone, I fill up a notebook like this.
Oh my
Like
God.
one side is like just a quick of what I did that day, and then the other
Okay.
side are like notes. So like you know uh, they have a sea worm festival in Lombok, or the oldest tree in the world was planted
Okay.
in Indonesia in 558. Things like this, or things I want to look up.
But you know
Um,
what? That tour that you went with locals, because locals are the ones that know the best places that
oh yeah.
normally sometimes are off the beaten path.
Oh, I had a really wonderful time. So I have a newsletter, and I send it out on the 1st and the 15th of each month. And
Okay.
one of my newsletter readers said, if you're ever in Portugal,
Okay.
Lisbon, let me know. And I was like, sure. So I told her we're going to be in Portugal on May 2nd, I think it was. And we met up with her. And she, the week before, had just completed writing her master's thesis about cemetery architecture. So she is
Wow.
just a tremendously knowledgeable person. And she took us on a 3.5 hour tour of this huge cemetery. It's called Cemetery Prazeres. Prazeres in Portuguese means pleasures, which is kind of an
Okay.
interesting name for a cemetery. But and she arranged, I had been to this cemetery once before, and there is a huge 40-foot tall pyramid in it that
Wow.
the Palmella family commissioned for themselves, and it is actually the largest mausoleum for a family in Europe. It has
Okay.
200 bodies in it or so there, and it's still being used by their descendants today, and has all sorts of Masonic symbolism and
Oh, really?
amazing.
It does,
Oh
huh? Because I was
yeah.
about, you got ahead of me. When I heard that pyramid, I was like, oh,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
it has a Freemason flavor to that.
It does. And inside there is even a sculptor by Canova, who is world famous sculptor for that era. I mean, he was so well known. Anyway, but when I was there the first time, I was just peeking through the keyhole and trying to take a picture. That's as much as I got. Well, Gisela, since we came, she had them open up the pyramid, and we got to
Uh,
go inside, walk
wow.
around, see everything, and then go down into the crypt and go
Oh,
around and tour the whole crypt, which was amazing. And
okay.
yeah, all these caskets there and coffins. It was really interesting to see. So that was wonderful, and I learned so much from my visit with her. And plus, now we're friends. I asked if I could ask her questions about different things, and she's like, "Sure,
Sure.
anytime." Because I
Let me
was like,
ask you something. Did they have the body in niches or did they have them in sealed caskets?
they had them in niches. You can see the casket. If you wanted to, I suppose you could
But
open the caskets. I mean, they were in
okay.
in little recessed
Okay.
niches in the wall, and then there were some spots look like maybe some people had been cremated later, but
Okay.
earlier it was pretty Catholic, and they didn't
Sure.
they don't
Yes.
they don't embalm either. They just put them in these caskets, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how they do it.
Well, let
um,
me tell you something. 200, I guess then the family's still in the area. They're still
It's
using it.
huge. Yeah. And I mean, it's a big, I mean, this is a 40-foot tall pyramid. I'm going to,
That's
if people want to see pictures, they should just
makes you
sign
wonder
up for
what
my
would
newsletter.
inspire them to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. They actually were wealthy, like the Duke of Palmella. And
Okay.
people back in the day, if they had money,
Yes.
now we get a chunk of change and we think, oh, I'll take a vacation, or I'll
Sure.
remodel the bedroom or the bathroom. Or, oh, make a really nice thing in my house. But people in the past, they'd be like, oh, I got this money. Maybe they would do some of those other things, but they would also high on the list would be, oh, I'm going to create a really cool family tomb for our
Yeah.
legacy. They had a real different sense of their legacy. I'm not sure. I don't know that we have that same feeling
I
today.
don't think we
I
do.
think, but in the past they did, and they're like, people are going to look and they'll forever look at this tremendous tomb and go, hey, the Palmella family there. And then, in order to kind of get permission to do this, Palmella, he also donated a bunch of land for
Okay.
to be used as the cemetery. So that kind of appeased people who might not have liked
Of course.
but it's an amazing, that pyramid is very it's kind of isolated in a way. You don't notice it right away because it's got all these trees on either side of it, and then a walkway
Uh-huh.
going down towards it. It's like you're walking towards a grand home. It was really a very special experience.
Let me because I'm sure you've noticed it. Like the older, uh, back in the time, even if you didn't put a 40 foot, people were more ornate in their tombstones. You know,
Mm,
either the obelisks or
mhm,
the angels or whatever.
mhm.
Like you go to a cemetery and you already know right away where the old part of the cemetery's at
Yes.
because they've got all the monuments. You go to the more modern side and all you got is a plaque on the ground, and that's
And a lot of times the reason we have that plaque on the ground is because the families don't tend the cemetery anymore, so they need something that they can just mow right over. Kind of.
yes. People don't
So
realize that that's part of the like the groundskeeper need
yeah,
to.
there was a big change. Cemeteries used to be tended by, family, and then by the locals from the church. They would do something every year where they get together. There's even some cemeteries here in Texas that still do that. They'll have an
Hmm.
annual decoration day, they call it, or annual homecoming. I always look for signs. They'll say like third Sunday of June, we're going to have a like a potluck. And I've been to these cemeteries here in Texas. So Texas, like I will see a barbecue off to the side and things. I mean, I've eaten some really good brisket at some of these
Yeah,
gatherings
yeah.
as well. I mean, they're fun, and it really is meant to be fun. It's a little different than most of America is not really doing that anymore. After the Great Depression, people had to move away. They weren't living in
Yes.
the same town, so they couldn't just go tend their dad's grave or their uncle's grave. You
And
used to
that's why
just
you
be able
also
to
have those
visit.
smaller family cemeteries that people,
Yeah,
if they lived far from the city, they couldn't go all the way to bury people in their big city cemetery. So I
yeah.
imagine that's when they would just put their own community or family
And so yeah,
cemeteries. As a matter
so
of fact, my husband, he off in St. Augustine, they have a family
oh yeah,
cemetery from an offshoot from Majorca,
wow.
and the we found it, and the and the cemetery is maintained by the families.
Oh, okay.
In
Mhm.
other words, they don't pay anything as far as the, when you go
Health
to a
care
regular
and all that.
cemetery, you got to
Mhm.
pay for the interment.
Yeah, because it's a business, and it's
Right.
someone who doesn't know you is doing it, and
And
you're
when I
paying for
went
this
there,
service.
all the I mean, it's a family plus there's also other people, but I'm saying it was started by the family. It is named
Wow.
after them, Pellicer Creek Cemetery, I think it is.
Oh, neat.
But everybody chips in somehow or other, their effort,
Mhm.
and they keep it straight. They keep it's all mowed and clean and, nothing
A
like,
little more
well, it isn't.
old. Mhm.
So yeah, I know that some cemeteries, because it's like they they
Mm.
might be short on money and they rather volunteer their services and keep it clean.
Yeah. Wow.
But
Well, that's really great.
yes, yes, yes. And I've seen that, you see that in more rural areas
Mhm.
also, where you have the family or community cemeteries, and it's really funny because sometimes I find their memorials are more, what's thoughtful, how's that,
Yeah. Yeah.
than some of the other ones. I
Mhm.
mean, as far as what people do or saddles, I mean, I have seen some stuff that's like, wow, that's original.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some interesting things like that too. Um, oh, but you were kind of getting back to the original question. We were talking about
Yes,
cemeteries being locked down or maybe not being as
yes,
safe. I had kind of an interesting experience. I hadn't read before about some cemeteries in the world where like people end up living in the cemetery. Poor people end up living in the cemetery for
yes,
one reason or another. But I'd
yes.
never really experienced that, other than I think I was in a cemetery in South Florida where the banyan tree was. You could tell that people were going in there to smoke wacky tobacco or whatever. I don't
Oh
know that they
yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and I can see. I mean, those banyan trees are really cool, but I'd never quite experienced what I experienced in Indonesia. I was in this city called Surabaya, which is kind of a cool name. It means shark crocodile, and has this whole myth about a shark and a crocodile that were fighting each other.
Okay.
Anyway, we asked our cab driver to take us to a cemetery,
Don't
and
you ever have taxi drivers that look at you and go, "What?"
yeah, sometimes they're like, "What are you saying? What are you saying?" So he, oh yeah, sometimes. And this guy hardly spoke any English, and my Indonesian is pretty limited. I can say please and thank you, and a
Uh
little
huh.
bit of pleasantries, but
Okay.
not too much. Anyway, I was able to, but he said sure, and so he said he would take us to the military cemetery. I really didn't want to go to that one, but whatever. So to get there though, we had to drive through this other cemetery, and so which was the local city cemetery. And
Okay.
as we were going along, I saw like some smoke coming up in one area, and I'm like, what's that? And then I noticed some dogs and dog dishes and things around. And then I saw people, he didn't want to stop or say anything. I saw people like sitting around like a campfire eating something. It looked like they were cooking. And then I saw tents and things. And, he explained, and then I saw this, it's kind of a famous statue that I've seen quite, how like a certain, there's fashion in cemeteries as there is in anything else. And you'll see someone will do a replica of the same famous statue, and you see it in different cemeteries. And so there's this one angel called the Monteverde angel that Giulio Monteverde sculpted like in 1882 or something in Italy. And you can see it in Genoa in the monumental. I want to talk about that too, the monumental cemeteries of Italy, and we'll get to that, dog ear that. Anyway, but people copied it all over. I've seen 2 copies in Texas. I've seen copies in France, Lisbon, where else? So I saw one in Surabaya, and I said, oh, stop here. I want to get out. He goes, oh, I cannot stop here. Not safe for you, not safe for me. He said, poor people living here. I'm like, okay, so they really were living here. I managed to get from him. We had a little bit of a little thing, that no. He was laughing like, no, I can't get out here either. So we get I'm like, okay, if you don't feel safe here, then okay. So then we got to the edge where there was a gate to go into the military cemetery, and this lady comes over, and he gives her money, basically, and then she unlocks it for it and lets us go through. And then it was like another world once we were in the Dutch military cemetery. It was like they had staff, they had this fancy little pond there, they had people. It was ungodly hot, and I could feel eyes on me as Larry, my husband, stayed in the taxi, and the taxi cab said he was going to stay in the cab too. And I'm like, oh great, I'm walking around here alone. I could feel someone looking at me, and sure enough, suddenly this guy pops up, and he I was a little scared, but he said he just wanted me to sign their guest book. I'm like, oh, okay, that's sure. But that was really unnerving to see people living in the cemetery, and just hadn't experienced.
What was it? I was recently, I was recently reading an article about, it was about in India. And about the when the English were there, the Raj, the period of the Raj, and how there were some old cemeteries and they were saying, they have people living in there. I was like, what?
I bet.
Yes, and people don't realize that, despite what you would think, superstition or fear of ghosts, forget it.
Yeah. But I had some other experiences. Let's see, that were not so much scared of people, but just some of the Okay, so I've been in some jungle cemeteries on this last trip too. So I was in Singapore, which is the tip of Malaysia, and they've got jungle just going right through it. I was in this really gorgeous cemetery called Bukit Brown, and I shared pictures on my newsletter once again of me standing next to this tremendous palm leaf. You had to have me next to it to realize how big and lush this jungle is. And so when you go there, and what was really cool was they have a lot of, it was originally owned by Chinese clans. So there was different, and I'm learning about them still. There was like the Hokkien clan and the, I forgot that. I don't want to get the names wrong, but they're different. I've got lots of notes in my notebooks about these different clans. And there's a warning sign when you get there, warning about like monkeys and snakes and other things. You have to be on the alert for cobra even there.
My God, that's right.
Yeah, here in Texas, I know how to kind of keep my eye out for the snakes we have. I usually have some gravel with me that I throw into tall grass ahead of me just to warn them and let them slither off. But cobra are a different thing. Like I met a guy who grown up in Malaysia, and he was just saying how he ran into a king cobra one day, and he said, all you have to do. He's like, all you have to do if you run into a king cobra, they can stand up about 3 feet tall, right? And he goes, they will look at you. And he said, you just have to stand perfectly still. He says, you can scream all you want, though. You can scream as much as you want and then wait for it to go. And I'm like, this is not an experience I want to have.
Right. It's like, I'm not gonna test if you were right or wrong on that.
But I did encounter some wildlife while we were there, because I'm always crouching down to take pictures. And sometimes that can the animal doesn't see, and then when I stand up, there's an animal. So I was I really want to go back to some of these cemeteries in Singapore when they're having, like, make friends with somebody. I hope I can, and maybe see what they do for their ancestor worship, because
Yes.
it's amazing what they do. Okay, I'll back up and tell you about the animals, but this is all one big thing. They
Okay.
have, how like when you have a picnic and you have like a nice little tent over you with open sides,
Yes.
they would have some of those set up at the grave site with lawn chairs all around it, and a ice chest there. But
Mm-hmm.
nobody was there because I think this happens at night. It was like seeing the aftermath of a big 4th of July party, because there was a place where they set off fireworks,
Okay.
in a little like special firework bin thing, and then there's booze. You can see empty booze bottles, and then rice all over, and then it's just left there. And there's signs saying not to leave your ancestral offerings, but some people, I think, just
All right.
get tired and go home. So as I was taking a picture of some of these, the leftovers from this big, it looked like it'd been a big party like the night before. I'm like, man, because the rice looked pretty fresh. All of a sudden, I stand up and I'm like, whoa! There were a troop of monkeys had come in, and they were kind of like, hey, this is our rice. And I'm like, fine. And I'm backing up.
Yeah, I have heard
Holy
that some of these troops
cow.
of monkeys, they're like not scared of humans, or
Oh, no, no, no. And they were so silent. They just dropped out of this big, dense jungle and were all around me. I'm like, fine, fine. So then I'm like, Larry. And he's like, yeah. And so we walk
Tui's
down.
thinking Planet of the Apes in
Exactly.
Indonesia.
Yes, yes. And then the other animal we encountered were some wild boar, which I didn't even know they had there.
Wow.
They weren't on the sign. All of a sudden,
Uh,
I see this little thing. I see some movements, and there's a little family of wild boar kind of went by me. I'm like, oh. Then by the time I thought to get a photo, I just kind of got a little, brown rump. You can't even really tell what it was, but I think I startled it. And then there was something else moving in the brush next to me, and I never figured out what it was. Maybe it was even a snake. It was just
I was
something that
gonna
was
say
it
sometimes
was
it's
something
good and
slowly.
sometimes
Yeah,
it's
I was
like
like, I'm just not going to investigate. There's
ignorance is
something,
bliss kind of deal. Like, all right,
something kind of
whatever
big
it
over there.
is.
Oh, and then when we were in Sri Lanka, I was at the grave. We were looking for the grave of Arthur C. Clarke, and we had this tuk-tuk driver
I
who
didn't
took.
know Arthur C. Clarke was buried in Sri Lanka.
I know, isn't that unusual? He's buried in Colombo, Sri Lanka. I don't know exactly
Okay.
why. I know I need to learn more about that. I,
Okay.
I just kind of had that on my list, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But that was a really fascinating cemetery, and our tuk-tuk driver was thrilled. He goes, no one has ever asked me to take them to the cemetery before, and
Okay.
he goes, it's beautiful, blah 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 blah, and he was able to translate a lot of the epitaphs for me, because a lot of them were in Sinhalese, which is this weird script that I can't
Yes.
even. And then there was some in English, of course, I could get. And then it was really interesting, just the
And what do they
different.
have? Do they have actual upright tombstones? Is
Oh, they
that
have,
how?
yeah, they have some that are obviously influenced by Western. Catholic. They had a Catholic section, but then they had like a Hindu section, and they had a
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist section. They had
Okay.
ones that had elephants and skeletons on it. This mausoleum with a big Buddhist wheel on the top. That was one of my
Wow.
favorite. They had, yeah, I mean, there's some symbols that I don't even know, that I need to look into.
It's like,
There's
yeah.
so many things that I need to, like, I'm so overwhelmed right now, Marlene, by like
No, and I
everything
know
I
that in
saw. You know what I mean? It's just
certain
like,
parts, especially in the Asia, like you said, the ancestor worship is important as far as, and once a family member dies and things like that, they have
yeah,
like a different custom, either when they visit the graves, or even they have different things as far as, in other words, that if you want your ancestors to take care of you, and if you disrespect them or you don't take care of their memory or offerings, you
they
get in
might be
trouble with your
unhappy
ancestors.
in heaven. Yeah, there's some. I need to look into that more. I've read a little bit about it, but and I had a really. Now let's go to Romania for a second, because I was just going to mention that in Sri Lanka, suddenly I saw a big snake
Yes.
skin shed there, and I'm stepping on it at one point. And you hear a crunching noise, and I'm like, oh my god, that's not a dry leaf, that's a shake, snake skin. And I thought, well, they don't bite during the day. Look, that's stupid. I just thought that, but I Googled it later and found out that
I was
actually
like,
it was
okay.
pretty dangerous what we were doing. But anyway, all right. So then we went to Romania recently, and we went to this cemetery in Iași, which is they consider the cultural capital of Romania. And
Okay.
our host said, "Yeah, let's go there." So we went there. It was on a Sunday, I believe. It was either a Saturday or Sunday. It was a weekend though. And when we got there, sometimes a cemetery will be a little bit busy. This
Hmm.
place was so busy. Right when you first come in, they have a gift shop, and then they have a little cafe and a coffee machine, and then
Right.
people are all walking around. And first thing I see is a group of people around a fresh grave, and there is an Eastern Orthodox priest standing
Mm.
there, and he's got a censer. He's swinging
Right.
you can smell the incense, and he's singing something, Hannah, whatever, and they're singing back. He's singing a hymn. It's like a call and response hymn, and I'm thinking,
Uh-huh.
oh, so I start to walk across the street to give them space, and Maria, one of my hosts, our couples, just pulls me. She's like, "Come on, Tui." She grabs me by the shoulder and just pulls me right over, and she's like, "Hey, yeah, this is what we do here. Sometimes this is what neat. You get to see a funeral service." And I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to."
Okay. Sure. It's like, let me crash the funeral.
I know. And then she went, "See, wasn't that neat?" And then we went up, and some other lady was washing her husband's tombstone. And Marie just
Okay.
goes, "Oh, yeah, so blah, 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 how are you?" But they just start having an old chit chat, like, "In the weather nice?" And, "Oh, you did it really, that's pretty soon." And so I quickly realized it was not the social norm there. It was fine to just talk to people in the cemetery, and people went there every weekend from what I could see. And
Yes.
well, yeah, people just come. This is a popular one. And so then our friend Constantine, the husband, who was our couple friend, he goes, "Oh, I know this man's nephew. I'm going to call him." So he makes a phone call. "Hey, I'm standing at your uncle's tomb right now, blah, 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 blah." And he called people as he recognized them, anybody, if he
Uh-huh.
recognized a name. And then I was off, of course, going bonkers, taking pictures of all the amazing headstones. And a lady just comes up to my husband and offers him a piece of cake. And meanwhile, other guys, you'd seen people, guys mostly, sitting at the benches, taking a nip out of their,
Yeah. It's like, all right.
whatever brandy, because everybody makes their own brandy there. So and it's not, you're not supposed to be drunk in public, but drinking in public is just tolerated. They're like, "Of course, yeah, everybody could drink in public."
And
You
what
just,
better place than the
I
cemetery?
know, and it was the most lively, upbeat cemetery experience I think I've ever had, and everyone was just, nobody was like, okay, I have been in a cemetery here on a nice day in Arlington, I think it was. And it's a pretty
Okay.
cemetery, and they have a nice pond. And there were some people having little picnics there, even though I wanted to get a picture. There's a pretty prominent sign: "This is no picnics." There were people all over. Come on, it was really nice. But there was still this super quiet to it. There was not this, no one was really talking to each other. Not the way in
Hmm.
Romania, maybe because they're all having a nip of that suica. But I mean, it
It's
was
like,
just,
oh, we're going to the cemetery? Good. Let's go.
it was really just a real highlight of my trip, just to experience that culturally. Um, it was pretty neat, I
And let
thought.
me the and I know we spoke about it, this how, maybe 100 years or so, they would design these cemeteries like parks. In other
Yeah.
words, here in the United States, it was normal where it was almost like a cemetery but also a park at the same time.
Yeah, they didn't have the idea of public parks. I mean, there's
Right.
such a thing to us now, but the original public parks were the garden cemeteries. And so I read accounts of people setting up their easel and painting, and,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
having carriage rides, and people going there for fun. And then eventually people started making parks that were just meant to be parks and not really having,
What was it? I
but
think I read about
we
one.
suffered for that.
I want to say it was in Chicago, who had like a. It wasn't like it was like a beer hall, but it was
Oh,
like right outside or something like that. It was like,
wow. Yeah. What a great idea. They do that in Curacao.
okay,
We have this tradition, and I've got the details of it in my notes. It's called like labaman, which means wash your hands. And he
okay.
goes, so our guide was saying, so when you go to a funeral, after the funeral, you have to wash your hands. But the best way to wash your hands is to drink booze or something. It was an excuse to drink. I need to, like I said, I have it in my
Oh man,
notes.
my hands are really dirty. Hold on. Hey, they're still dirty. Okay.
As we said, you might notice as we drive around that next to every funeral home there's a bar. And he goes, the reason for that is this lavaman tradition. And I'm like,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm going to have to
That is excellent.
dig
That's
that out my notes. But
excellent.
I do love hearing all the different traditions from around
Sure,
the world. I mean,
sure.
a lot of similarities, but of course there are those unique and quirky differences like that.
So let me ask, and it seems because sometimes you always think of places like in Romania or that you think, oh, they're very superstitious about cemeteries and the dead and everything because we're always thinking of vampire and Dracula.
Oh yeah. Oh, so our hosts did take us to see where Vlad Tepes was born in
Right?
Sigismund, and then they took us to Bran Castle, and
Okay.
so because they know my husband's really into that whole, like when he was a kid, he actually, a teenager, he slept in a coffin that he built himself and was
Oh my
he was
God.
the original goth, I guess, before that was even a
Yeah.
thing. So he like I bought these little fangs that you can put in.
Uh-huh.
You have to use like denture stuff grip to make it
Yes.
really stay in. And
Mhm.
so we decided that morning that we were going to Bran Castle. We wore those to breakfast. We had a
Oh
little.
my God.
It was so hard. It was so hard to keep a straight face. They're like, Bună ziua, how are you? Good morning. I'm like, oh, fine. I'm trying not to show them. And then we sit down for breakfast, and I just smile, and they're like, oh, they were hooting. They thought it was so funny.
Oh my
Then I had to
God.
come out. I realized I couldn't eat with them in. You think it was
That is
Larry
hilarious.
was
It's
trying to
like,
bite into a peach. He was like, I couldn't. So anyway, so then we wore them to Bran Castle, and after a while, you forget they're on. You forget. So I see this little girl, and I innocently am like smile at her, and she goes, wow, like screams bloody murder, and I'm like, what? I mean, it took
oh
me
my God,
like
that's
a
great.
couple seconds to register that I just traumatized her.
Sure, Tui, you traumatized the kid, man.
And
She's thinking, oh,
I know, it was so funny. It was that was nice
yeah,
of them.
because Vlad Tepes, I believe they never were able to find an official burial spot for him, right? I think they did away with his body or they hid it or something like that,
I have a
right?
little book about it all to read, but I don't have the full. I'm not the full up on it. I've got too much information in my head right now.
No, no,
So
I
that
know, I
story's
know,
great.
I
That
know.
was really fun of them to take us there. I really enjoyed that. Those Brand Castle was pretty cool.
Right, because, and I'm sure, a lot of people are aware that for the people in that area, Vlad Tepes is not, there's no, on the contrary, it's not negative, his image there.
Yeah,
It,
and well, and like to them, they've really embraced the whole Dracula thing. They're
sure, well,
convinced
I
of it.
could see
Now
where
they
it's a moneymaker. It's a
get it.
moneymaker.
But it was also the home of their beloved queen. They had a Queen Maria who was given Bran
Okay.
Castle in the 1920s. And as you walk around, you can kind of see her bedroom and how she had it too. And there's certain areas where they lean into the Dracula myth, but then there's bits where you just see what a neat little castle it was that she had. And it is interesting. King Charles actually has a place. He loves Romania, but
Okay.
he's actually, I think, related to Vlad Tepes. I forget.
I
My
don't know. I
husband
was
was
going to
telling
tell
me.
you. I had never heard about it, but I don't know if you saw that last painting they did. We're going to segue here in a second. Let's step outside. Have you seen that painting he got done? I was like, what?
And people were comparing it to side by side with Vlad Tepes. There's a painting of Vlad Tepes.
Right, right. And it's like, believe it or
Hilarious.
not, I mean, I know that all these royal families somehow or other they're related.
They are.
Maybe yeah, whatever. But I wasn't aware of that. And when I saw that, they were saying, oh, because he's related to Vlad Tepes. And I was like, why am I not surprised?
I know.
It's
It's
like,
just
okay,
it's
whoever
just
did this for you, like, it's like he's got like a head floating in a sea of blood. At least that's my interpretation
I
of it.
know.
But yeah,
I haven't. Yeah, I've just seen the comparisons. I thought that actually happened. That actually came out while we were in Romania. So I'm like, what?
okay.
This is new? Yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
Right. It
So
was
yeah,
like, okay,
I
you
thought
didn't
that
want
was
anybody to overlook your painting, did you? Because who's going to overlook the big giant red painting? Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's the, I know that for them, that it's for that area, I know it's a tourist draw.
Yes.
But besides
Even
that,
for
but if
local.
you look at the times that Vlad Tepes lived in those, that they
Mm.
had the Ottomans, that
Oh
the
yeah,
wars there were
violent
pretty
time.
horrific on
Hmm.
from both sides. This
Yeah, I
was
don't think being horrifically cruel and was anything
no,
too
I
out of the
guess I'm not
norm.
saying he wasn't maybe cool, but I'm saying if you look at what other military, depending on whatever, in and all warfare back then was very
Yes.
horrific,
Hmm.
cruel like that. You're like, what? So it's like, it's not like
They
Vlad
didn't,
was like,
they didn't have the Geneva Conventions. We'll just say.
yeah, no, no.
Yeah, it was pretty. No, no, I didn't. I don't. Yeah,
Did you ever come across any cemeteries where the whoever the tour guide or a driver was like, no, we cannot go, not because of the living, but they were like, there was any superstition or negativity attached to it that they're like, no, we can't, no, I don't want to go there. Or, that place
well,
is not good.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I went, by myself to some that maybe people would have thought that. Because I know that the one in Malaysia that I was in, there are some ghost stories linked to it.
Okay.
And there are some pretty scary, when you look into that, Indonesia and Malaysia, some of their creatures that they, the mythical creature or whatever you want to call them, some of
Yes.
the supernatural creatures they have there can be pretty darn frightening. And I can't think of the names right
And I
now,
know
but there
I
was
know
some
they
pretty
they
scary.
they have a lot of superstition around people that die violently, like as far as when their ghosts
Mm,
come back. They're like in
I'm
other words, they're
sure.
very that you have to be very careful with that as far as that it's not just a ghost, like what comes back
Yeah,
is it's a very
a different
angry
thing.
ghost.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I do have some notes back in my books again, but about
Okay.
some of the Indonesian creatures that like I was like my on the ship there were a lot of Indonesians. I remember thinking I don't think I will bring up this topic with them. I mean, because this woman gave a lecture. That's the nice thing about these long cruises. You get a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cultural and historical lectures, and she was
Sure, you get
talking,
everything.
and she was saying, yeah, there's a lot of Indonesian staff on the ship, and they quite possibly believe in this or that
Hmm.
creature. And I'm like, oh, so don't. I just won't. I don't even want to ask about it. Like if it's gonna scare them, you know
Let
what
me
I
ask you,
mean?
since you were in that area, did you or have you heard about the cemetery called Bonice Cemetery? I believe
Um.
it's on the outskirts of Prague.
Oh no, I
And
haven't been there. No.
and well, since man, you're the world traveler,
They
it
don't
used
see
to be it was attached to an asylum, which at one point
Mm.
was one of the biggest in Europe.
Oh, okay.
And they
It's
only buried people till up to the 1950s, and then it became people were throwing stuff, but they cleaned it up. And it's got a couple of famous people. And you
mm.
remember the that movie Amadeus that
Yeah,
came
I
out?
love that movie.
Well, they shot the burial scene for Mozart
Oh,
because the director of the film was from that area. So
oh,
and that's why I think, and they call it the Cemetery of Fools because, of course, it was a tension sign. But it's got some unusual
oh,
people there that
huh.
were buried. A lot of anonymous ones because you know
Yes.
it
Mm-hmm.
was an asylum cemetery, but there was other
Mm.
people. So yeah, that was an interesting one that's taken on because of, and there was also a story that I want to say in the early '90s, Margaret Thatcher from England, for some unknown reason, stopped in at the cemetery
Mm.
and was trying to find a certain grave. But by the time a lot of the memorials were gone, and also I guess the records keeping was bad.
Record
And
keeping is awful
supposedly they
at
found the town drunk.
Oh,
Okay, this is, well, when I say the town drunk, the guy that was like, if you want to find him, he's always in the tavern, who at
yeah.
one point was a friend of the cemetery keeper.
Mm-hmm,
And they went over there because they started digging in a few places and they were like, no, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. They ran the guy down and sure enough, he knew, supposedly, but they never disclosed who it was that she was looking for.
mm-hmm.
And she
Wow.
did take the body. She was saying that it was an English soldier that had been shot down, but there was always,
Something
right. And she did
strange
take,
about
they exhumed the body and they took
uh-huh.
it. But yeah, it was one of those weird things of all things, the
Mm.
prime minister. This was right after she had stepped down as being a prime minister for the UK.
So it's just something she wanted to do.
Right. It was like, why would you come all the way and just and exhume this body that had been
Hmm.
from World War II? It was really unusual.
Oh, no, I'll have to look into that.
Yes,
That's
yes. Bonice,
I'm
Bohnice is the name of the psychiatric hospital, and
write it down.
it's on the outskirts. It was once upon a time, like they were saying,
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest
Margaret Thatcher.
hospitals in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This, of course,
Mm-hmm.
is after World War One, everything
Yeah,
like
yeah.
broke up. But and also, let me ask. Sometimes you hear. I don't think so much in the urban, but in some of these more rural cemeteries, you hear in that part of the where they how's this that they kind of still believe, like, I don't want to say vampire, but the dead coming back, and that they have sometimes burial
Hmm.
practices to make sure that
Oh, hmm.
whoever is buried doesn't come back. That kind of deal.
I know that
Did you
does
ever
seem.
run across
I
anything
mean,
like that?
haven't. I have seen mort safes, which
Really?
were I saw those in Scotland, and those were to keep what they called resurrectionists, which were people
Yes.
from digging up bodies and selling them to the medical college because they
I
didn't
know
have
people don't realize how much of a problem that was.
Well, also, I mean, they didn't have access to bodies, and also people really were concerned, like that they needed all their parts. I see a lot of graves for just like someone had their leg. There's one I saw this really cute grave. The guy's leg was cut off, and he had it just says leg of Stringfellow on it.
Oh,
He had
you're kidding.
his leg buried. I've seen arms buried separately. There's an arm in Paradise, Texas. There's an arm in Granbury. The leg though is really cute because he's got this. He spent money on this. I
So
mean,
he
the
actually
leg,
like it's like it deserves its own burial. That's
because
funny.
then when Judgment Day comes, you can get all your parts. Even if your leg's buried in one cemetery and the rest of you is buried elsewhere, I guess they somehow think that that's going to be needed. I don't think. I mean, my dad had to have his leg amputated, and at the time, I thought, isn't that interesting? If this were 100 years ago, maybe we would be thinking, oh, are you going to bury that leg? I mean, he didn't ask for his leg after they buried. It's a
Right.
medical waste, right? But that just shows you how things change in 100 years.
Yes.
I mean, that one in Paradise, I think that was just maybe 1912 or something even.
Right. That's
I come across some really interesting newspaper articles about, they'll say, like someone had buried their leg, but then it started itching, so they dug up the leg and scratched the leg and
oh
then
my
buried
God.
it to get rid of the
Okay.
itch. Weird things like that. Or they didn't bury it right away, so then they needed to, and then they felt better after they did. And these
It's really
little
incredible what your
newspaper
mind will
articles.
do to you.
And my dad
As
did have what they call phantom itching at some point. It's
yes,
like
yes,
leg
yes, yes,
pain.
they did. They
But I mean,
did.
none of us in this day and age felt like, oh, I better just go dig up your leg for you.
Well,
Oh, well,
but what you were saying about the resurrectionist or body, people don't realize. What was I think? I was in Indianapolis. Um, they even robbed the if it got out. It had been happening supposedly like for
oh
25
yeah.
years, like post Civil War,
Mhm.
and apparently the
The
people like
riot.
the rich cemetery thought that the only ones that got robbed were indigents.
Oh, I
Come to
see.
find out, they were robbing even the nice cemeteries because they
Yeah.
were getting so much money by and the ones that were implicated were these universities.
Yes, it was. There was some riots at some of those colleges or universities. I read some newspaper articles about it. Like a guy heard that maybe his daughter's body had been used by a medical college, and so they
Yes,
stormed the college, and I think he discovered her hand in a jar. This is fuzzy.
yes.
I haven't read this for years, but it was
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, to the point where there were some riots here and there because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. People
Mhm.
don't realize. You think, oh, no, there was a lot of money to be made,
Yeah.
and
So
you
thank goodness.
know the demands of science. That's the way they
Hmm.
looked at it. Were that hey, and they didn't care if. As a matter of fact, oh my God, President Harrison, our U.S. president,
Yeah.
his father's body got stolen.
Oh, they used to ransom them. Did they ransom his
Well,
body, or did they
no,
just
what
steal it?
happened was his father, he wasn't president yet, but there was a
Oh,
political family and everything. And the father is, I guess, sick. Right around the same time, a friend of theirs, which is a young man like there, dies of consumption, tuberculosis,
yeah.
right? Like a few days before. So when they go to bury the father, they see the grave of their friend who just was buried
Mhm.
maybe a few days, and they see that the grave's been disturbed. So
Oh,
they're immediately thinking,
mm,
oh my God, somebody's stolen it.
yeah.
So a friend of the family, the two young men, they go off to I can't remember which university it was, we're going to find our friend's body that's been taken, been stolen.
Hmm.
So they say that they see like some of the janitor, because even the janitors were in on this, the doctors, the janitors, the ones
Yeah.
that they see something going on. So finally they rush up to where the dissection laboratory is, and they find a body that's wrapped up, ready to be put like down one of those chutes. I guess they were trying to get rid of it.
Oh, hide things. Yeah.
And the cousin, because it was like two cousins, that he says, well, he goes, no, I know that's not so and so because that man's burly, and I know my friend. He died of tuberculosis. He was
He
very
wasted
thin,
away. Yeah.
so I don't think that's not my cousin. And the guy was with him goes, well, but take a look at his face anyway, because he was like all bound up.
Yeah.
When he looks, it's his father. They had stolen his own father's body. Later on, like I think 2 or 3 weeks, they actually did find the friend in a pickled barrel, like because they would put
Ooh.
him in these barrels
Hmm.
in some other university. I think it was in Cincinnati, somewhere like
It
that.
was Ohio, was where I was reading about it.
Right. And it was like, and he just didn't think it was. And he goes, no, that my friend is very thin.
I mean, what a
It's
horrific
not.
thing. I mean, bodies change from day to
But what I'm
day.
saying is, there was no thing about like if it was a well off. Nah, they didn't care, man. Those
Just
resurrectionists,
want
they
a
wanted to
fresh one.
take you.
Yeah.
They took you. So
Yeah.
and I imagine. I mean, I haven't. I remember reading that, and I was like, you know what? If you think about it, you're thinking, well, this person's dead, but still, it's a desecration. I'd be worried. I wouldn't want my family's body to be
Without
used for.
permission, I mean, my goodness. If
Yes,
you,
yes. And then you were, I know one time we talked about how there was also that fear of being buried alive kind of
oh
thing,
yeah. Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
where
Yeah. Hmm.
people put up like little things with their, like, what is it, like, I guess just to make sure that they could get out what was it, like a ringer or something like that?
Bell and different things like that. There was a guy here who allegedly had a phone line for 3 days installed. He jokingly told us because he used to drink really heavily, and he was afraid that people would mistake him passed out drunk for
Oh
dead.
my
And
God.
so he said, "But I'll call y'all from hell and tell you how it is."
Right. Yeah.
But
Because,
he wanted that, and then there's another guy who dug his own grave, and he put two different padlocks on it. He lined it with bricks, and he had it padlocked, and then he had a fresh suit. He was buried in one suit, and then he had this
uh-huh,
other suit down at his feet for like to change into on Judgment Day.
just in
I mean, he
case.
thought everything through so far. He even wanted to be buried, the dirt to be tossed gently on his casket, so he hid bottles of booze in the dirt beside it, so that, and he told it, so that you will find like party favors, like while you're burying me, you're going to find bottles of booze.
That's
He was
incredible.
one of the
That's
most, yeah, I know,
incredible.
he was such a character. Like, you really want to meet some of these people. That guy and the two both seemed like they were a hoot.
And the things that people worry about, but I
Yeah,
see it, and especially a while back where people weren't always embalmed.
yeah,
So, because usually we think if you end up in a funeral home, they might notice that, hopefully, that notice you're not dead.
so yeah. I think just last week there was a case of someone who went to the funeral home and they noticed her breathing, and then so they
Oh,
rushed her to the hospital. But then she did die. I mean, she was in hospice
sure,
on
sure,
her
yeah,
way
they
out.
were.
But still, you hear cases of people coming alive, waking up at their funerals a bit, like in South America, places where
Yes, I've
they
heard
don't
of that.
embalm now. Like in like Portugal, they don't embalm. I mean, you think about embalming
You
is
want to clear a room? Have have
yes,
that supposed corpse make a noise, or
I
much less sit
know.
up. That'll be it. And
Yeah,
nobody's gonna stick around.
yes.
So yeah,
Oh,
the so far of all your travels, what would you say has been the most interesting cemetery that you've gone to?
oh, phew. Oh, okay. A lot of them have been very interesting. There's one that's amazing, and I'm actually going to be. I mean, it's really hard to pin it down because
Okay.
but I will say that I'm very excited that I get to return to this cemetery this September because I'm going to be leading a tour. I've been asked to be
Okay.
a tour guide, and I was only got to spend a day there before, and now I'm really excited to be able to go back. We're going to have this woman, Lisa Statkus, created. She does these art tours for people so they can come and take pictures, and then they paint the pictures later or sketch or do sketches while they're there. And she takes them to historic places in Italy, and she's been on
Okay.
my newsletter for a few years, and we've back and forth chatted about different symbols before. But she, while I was on this big trip, she invited me to lead a tour from September 1st to 11th. It'll be in Italy, and one of the big cemeteries we're going to go to is in Genoa. It's Cemetery Staglieno. It's one of their, what they call them in Italy. They have what they call monumental cemeteries, and
Okay.
they are so gorgeous. This particular one in Genoa, people such as Hemingway, Mark Twain wrote about it and said that something along the lines of, long after we've forgotten all the churches and other sites we have seen, we will remember this cemetery because the art here, I'm not quoting him verbatim, I don't remember, but it was all like,
Right.
we will remember this because it has statues in there that are like life size. There is one of a woman, she's standing there, she even has a teardrop coming down her face. And while I
Wow.
was running around, I was just kind of chasing the light around the whole day, just running and running and going, I want to come back and spend a week here.
So just
Um,
the statuary in and of
the
itself.
statuary is amazing, but I kept thinking it was real people. So I'd come around the corner and I'd be like, "Oh, Miss Scuzzy, oh, you're not a person."
It's like, oh no,
Like there was one, he looks like
that's excellent.
a monk standing there. I thought it was a man, and I like said, "Pardon me" to him a couple times. And but more than that, they have ones that are so beautiful, and ones that have been copied all around the world, like that one, that Monteverde angel. The
Mm-hmm.
original is in Genoa's Staglieno. So
Okay.
if anyone wants to do this, we still have some
Yes.
spots available.
Oh,
Just
so they can go to your website
yeah,
and to get on
si-
the tour.
I
Okay.
would say sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get a from the first on the 1st and 15th of each month, and there will be information in there. That's the best way I think to get a hold of me is my
Okay.
newsletter, because people, and I love sending that newsletter. It's so neat. Like I meet people all around the world. I in just the last few weeks, I've heard from someone in California, someone in Key
Okay.
West, and then I forget where the other Pittsburgh, I think Pennsylvania, and all of them said that they were inspired from like my books and my newsletter to
Yes.
start cemetery tours. So and I
Yes.
collect cemetery tour info everywhere I go. I'm really happy to see how many cemeteries have really amazing tours, like
Yes.
self guided ones. People, that's one good thing about the pandemic. Now everybody knows how to use a QR code. Like my husband
Yes.
and I were talking about doing some QR code tours before COVID, but nobody knew what they were. And like, I was like, how am I going to get anybody to do that? So, but
Right.
yeah, if anyone wants to join me on that trip, it's going to be so fun because this woman has planned all the transportation. I think we stay at her villa at one point. She has like a
Wow.
chef there who's going to cook for us.
Okay.
Then she knows that Italy's known for its food. I mean, pack some elastic waistbands. We're going to have some good food there. um, it's
Yeah,
just
some
going to
good
be, and so
pasta.
what we will do is, and she has planned for us to go to some just historic towns and
That's
little
great.
medieval towns and walk around. But my role in it is to give a little overview of the different cemeteries we're visiting and talk about the symbols that you'll be seeing. Maybe give you like a little fun homework, like keep your eye out for this type of symbol. This is what this means. And so I've got this kind of my homework for the next 2 months is this huge book about Italian
Let
funeral
me ask you something. Do you find that there was some type of universal symbol that you saw it like in different countries?
universal symbol that I saw
And
everywhere.
I know a lot of it might differentiate because depending on the religion of the person, like
Yeah, let me think on that. Um, hmm, I'm trying to think. I mean,
because you always think of, and I know like the angels, or
mhm.
if it's a Christian tradition, you got the
Well,
cross, or you got
and
um
the Portuguese. I mean, nowadays you don't tend to think of Portugal as a. If I say name a major world power, you're not going to say
mhm.
Portugal. I mean, it's not going to be the first thing to come to mind. But back in the day, they were the sailors,
Oh
and
my God, yes.
they
They had
touched
Goa
everywhere.
off the coast of India. They
They
were all over
did.
the place.
And so their influence, that sort of
Yes.
Catholic influence, thanks to them, can be
Yes.
seen everywhere. And then, of course, the Spanish as well.
Yes.
And then missionaries come to certain areas, and you can see the influence as well. But so you
Mhm.
do see the extent of Catholic symbolism is really
Yes.
everywhere. But everybody, I would like one thing is everybody. I guess a universal, not so much a symbol, but a universal grave good, like something you always everywhere you go, you do see people leaving food and drink at.
Yes.
Um, I mean, you don't see that in Jewish cemeteries; they just leave stones. But everywhere else, I've seen pretty much. I've seen like the local brand of beer or something, or
Right.
someone's left a little something, a little
And
snack
over
there.
here they have like the the Day of the Dead, or
Oh yeah, there's a really big Day of the Dead thing over in Dallas that I'm going to go to this year. I'm at
right,
at
because
Oakland
that's
Cemetery. It's going to be great.
right,
But
because people don't realize there's Halloween, and there's November 1st is the Day of the Martyrs, and then the Day of the Innocents.
oh, is that how it goes?
Okay. And especially a part of the what you call it, of the celebrations for the Day of the Dead was mostly also the part for the children who had passed away, for like November
Oh
2nd,
yeah,
which is the Day of the Innocents. But you know how everything
innocent.
gets rolled up
It
into one,
does. Mhm.
and it morphed into the going to family family graves, and like you were saying, clean them up and put fresh flowers and
Yeah, the marigolds.
remembrance and all those things.
Hmm.
Yes, yes.
I
And a lot of
like.
people will say it's like that once a year to remember like your mortality kind of thing.
Mhm. I think it's
So
good for us to go out. I think cemeteries are really important because they get you outside. A
yes,
cemetery is an indoor place. So there you are. Number one, if you always spend all your time sitting in your apartment, your house, if you're in a cemetery, you've stepped outside. Number one, that's good for
yes,
your health
yes,
on so many
absolutely.
levels. Then, if you visit it different times of the year, you become aware, whether you want to or not, of the changing of the seasons and the different things are
Yes.
blooming, and so you get this connection to Mother Earth and her cycles. And then I think it's really good, like when you see the statues that they get moss on them or this or that, some they get a little worn
Mm-hmm.
down. That just shows you the effect of time. And I think that's when I just always say that cemeteries are for the living, and I think it's because they help. I just think we can get really removed from um, the cycles of Earth and the Earth and
Yes.
in the nature, and like they're really great places for observing nature too,
Right. And
birding, and they
I've
provide.
heard that in some northern states, like if you died in the winter, sometimes I had to wait till spring to
Oh yeah,
bury you because
the ground was frozen, and they have
yeah,
special places to put your body. Those little shacks, and I do see those in certain places. They still have the
yeah,
I forget the name of that. The holding. My brain is just too full of stuff right now. I just feel kind of like it's settling in.
yes.
But you do see those, and yeah, sure, cold areas they would have to wait until
Mm-hmm.
the ground thawed. But I think that's important, and everyone, even in our society, we all know that you should be quiet when you're in a cemetery. Well, unless you're in Romania and you're talking to everybody, but I think it's good for us
And
that
having a drink.
having a drink, eating some cake, and having some brandy with strangers.
Right,
A
exactly.
little different situation, but I think it does makes you people who never meditate. Maybe that's the closest they're going to get is a little stroll through the
Sure.
cemetery, and I just think that can help connect you with a bigger picture of the world and the cycles and
Yeah, yeah.
all
It
those
gets you
wonderful,
outside
important
and
things. Yeah, I think anything that gets us outside um, is a wonderful thing because I just love nature. I just think it's
yeah, yeah. The
I like to say
out
Earth's
where I
my
live,
favorite
it's really
planet.
funny because they have a lot of, you know, when I was in South Florida, all the cemeteries where they were like official cemeteries. How's this?
Yeah.
And you had a gate and you had a fence or whatever. It
Oh
was
yeah.
fenced and
Yeah.
whatever.
There's some fancy ones.
Around here, they have a lot of small cemeteries that you turn a corner and you got a tombstone right next to the sidewalk.
Oh wow.
Like maybe it's like an acre, and I'm not even talking because you'll see
Mhm.
some graves. You know how sometimes around the church you might see some
Yeah.
graves.
Sure.
No, these are actual just cemeteries, but they start like right there, and they're
Wow.
open. There's no fencing, there's no gates, there's no nothing. They're like
Yeah.
right
Fascinating.
there, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
right
oh,
there.
okay, cool, yeah. But that
Wow.
that happens a lot where I guess it's like you know nobody. In other words, nobody gets creeped out because
That's good.
my
I don't think
husband
they
because
should.
they built a house next to one that we always take a my husband was like you couldn't pay me to live in that house and
Oh, and I would love to live next to a cemetery.
that's me. I always said I wouldn't mind, I don't care about that, and he's
I
looking at me like you're crazy.
Oh man, I see some of these little cemetery, the caretakers cabins that they have at
Yes,
them, and I'm like, oh, I would love to live there. You
yes,
know,
yes.
a
Let me
nice.
tell you something. I would love to interview somebody that actually had spent time because I've heard of people that have actually lived adjacent to, and they have some funky stories
Yeah,
sometimes.
I know.
Uh,
Could be
but yeah,
interesting.
that there was once upon a time there were actual caretaker cottages on
Oh
the
yeah.
grounds
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
things like of that nature. But oh,
Oh
Twee,
yeah.
it's been wonderful to speak to you. Well,
Always
let me
fun to
ask you. I
talk
know
to
you
you.
have a what. Is your, well, I'm hoping that you do your book about your adventure on in the Washington Island. But
Yeah.
are you planning another book
Yeah,
based on your travels?
I am. I'm working on one tentatively called "Around the World in 80 Graves." Although it'll be
That's great. That's excellent.
I
That's
like
excellent.
I'm a sucker for a pun. There will be more than 80 graves in it. You know what I mean? It's just but
Yes,
I
yes,
just think
that's excellent.
that's fun because I really have seen I just I've had some interesting experiences too in some of the cemeteries that I like to write up. So
Yes,
and share.
yes.
I think it would be a lot of fun and I want to have
You know
more
what?
photos of them. So anyway.
And
But
I'm sure you've come across that despite all the differences, we're all common humans,
oh yeah.
in other words, we're more like despite everything.
Yeah, that's it. Everywhere you go, that's what I like to say. Like when you meet someone in another country, they don't say to you, "Hey, I've got the best government in the world." No, no, they go,
Yeah.
"Hey, we've got the best mountains, we've got the prettiest lakes, we've got the
Yeah.
best food, and I love my family." And it doesn't matter
Sure.
where you are in the world. That's all people care about is when they talk about what they love about their area, they're telling
Yeah.
you about how beautiful planet Earth is, where they happen to be,
Yes,
the neat things
exactly.
they do, the great food they make,
Sure.
and their family. Here, look at a picture of my family. Everyone just loves their family and just wants to
Yeah.
get on by. It's just all this other crap. Ugh. Anyway, that's
Exactly.
my
Exactly.
feelings. But
Um, Tweet for my, I'm going to have a link to your website on the credits of the
mhm.
show, but for my podcast listeners, what is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I would say go to my website, which is just my name, Tui Snider. It's just TuiSnider.com, Tui Snider. There's no Y's in it, so sometimes people get
Right.
lost. And then yeah, and if you want to come to Italy, that would be great. But
I think that's
I would say
fantastic.
just sign up for my newsletter, and then it comes out on the 1st and the 15th. The best way to get a hold of me is just to hit reply to my newsletter, and
Mm-hmm.
then I have links in there to other things that are going on. I'll be
Okay.
sharing the link to this in my next on my next newsletter, I'm sure. Um, yeah, and that's I would just say if anyone, I love hearing from people. I love that's been one of I love the conversations that start, and meeting people in person from my newsletter is always a wonderful
Sure.
thing as well. So yeah, and if you ever come up to Texas, make sure you let me know.
Yes. You know what? This is the thing most people don't realize because I have one of my cousins, she travels. I mean, she's getting off the plane and she's planning her. And the thing is, when you have all the animals I've got,
I understand that.
that
Yeah.
is the bargain you make when you have your animals,
One of my good friends
which
is like
is
that too.
I'm limited. And it's not like, and I tell everybody, it's not like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put my one or two dogs and I'm going to kennel them, or board them.
Yeah.
I've got so many animals and so many things, and it's like yes, I get my reward on a daily basis, and the
Yes.
bargain I make is that unfortunately, and
But
it's
you
the
you
thing,
do
and
so
you
much.
get
You
you
have
get
so
and you
many
think
great
and nobody's going
projects
to be able to
going.
take care of my animals
Oh,
because you when you have a lot of animals, there's this thing that, and when you look at your animal, you know right away, something's wrong. Wait a minute,
oh, I have that issue even with my okay, so I'm down to one cat and we have an aquarium. And I can when I have my aquarium, I can have crabs in there, I can have shrimp, I can do all these things. No one can ever take care of it. It doesn't seem
Mm-hmm.
hard to me. I know how to take care of it because I'm from the Northwest, so I like it to be like a little tidal pool. But
Right,
I have had to really pare down our aquarium to just a few fish now, unless I'm going to be home for a big chunk of time. I
right,
know what you mean, Marlene. You just no one quite understands that whole taking care of it. Even our cat,
right.
I get tremendously homesick for her, so I've been really glad to be back for
So what
that.
did your cat do when she saw you or he saw you?
Oh, she just was like snuggled up to me and she usually
Uh-huh.
meows to me for like about 45 minutes. But it's like
Oh,
it sounds like she's telling me everything that happened, like different
like,
meows, like
where have you
and
been? What were
then
you
there was a
thinking?
tornado warning, and then this happened, and there was thunderstorms, and meow 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 meow, and then she makes biscuits the whole time, and then
Yes, I know what that
she's
is.
my writing partner. She's with me all the time. I
Yes.
actually have one drawer in my desk where she took over. Like if I'm trying to write there, I can't.
Uh,
I had to stapler and other stuff there, but she just started sleeping on top of it. So I finally was like, okay, this is your drawer apparently. So, but
yes,
she's
I gotta be
my
close. I gotta be close to mom. I gotta stay close to, like, yeah.
exactly.
I believe it
So
or not, I've got 8 dogs all around me underneath my desk
oh
right now. Yeah, there's
wow,
eight
they
of
are
them.
so behaved. I've just got the one
So
kitty.
yeah, they all do the same thing, and it's like, as a matter of fact, the other day I filmed it. I went to the bathroom, and I've got an audience. Like I got an
Oh yeah,
entourage
yeah, you
sitting
do.
outside the tub, looking at me like, and it's like, okay, I'm alive. We just supervising to make sure you do it right. I don't know what's up with
Oh,
them, but yeah, yeah, I know
that's
what it
really
is.
cute.
Again, Tweet, it has been absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful to speak to you, and I will be following up. I wish I could go on that trip to Genoa.
Oh, I wish you
Believe
could
me,
too. It'd
but
be
I
so
can't even leave
fun.
my husband. He'd be, I know, I'm almost afraid. It's like, no, no. Even
Yeah, I
if he
wish.
offered, I'll stay behind you go, I'd be like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I'd still be worried. What can I say?
yeah. Well, I
One of those
understand.
things. But again, it has been wonderful to speak to you, and I'm looking forward. When do you think you're going to release your book?
I don't know yet. It kind of
Oh, I
depends.
know I'm dropping it on you, like, and here you are, like, man, my
I
brain's
just
still
got
like,
home. I'm doing homework. I'm going to be doing homework for the
yes.
cemetery tour. So it won't be this summer. If my, it would probably I don't know if I'll be able to get a book out by the end of the year. It'll probably be next year before I
Let me
can
tell
get
you
a
something.
book
If you
out.
can, you're that's something else because considering all the material that you told me that you put together,
I've got a lot to go through, a lot to
yeah,
learn.
yes, a lot.
But
Again, Tui,
I'll keep
thank you
working on
so
it.
much. It has been
Thank you,
wonderful.
Marlene. This was fun as always.
Yes, absolutely. Take care. And if you come to
Okay, you
Florida, you
too.
let me know, okay?
I will. I
Some
will.
I got some places that I could take you to off the beaten path.
Oh, I'd love that. That would okay. I will definitely. You know, I do travel, so I will let you
Yes,
know.
you let me know.
I will. Thank you,
Take
Marlene.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Well, there you go. Genoa, cemetery in Genoa. I'd love to do that. But like I said, the bargain I made was no, I couldn't for the length of time. No, and you know what the truth is? Even I'd be worried. I'd be like enjoying it, but not really enjoying it because I'd be afraid of what I would find when I came back. Because right now, like I said, even now, like the other day, I looked at one of my roosters and I was like, "Oh, you're over there in that corner. Something's up with you." Sure enough, he's like feeling a little bit wonky. Sometimes animals get sick. And usually what I have to do is I have to put him not in isolation, but in a cage and give him water, which I dose with medicine. But bottom line, there's things about your animals, even chickens, even livestock, even that your eye immediately picks up on when something is off. And I'd be worried that even if I left my husband, he'd miss it. He'd be like, "Oh, hey, your whatever died." It'd be like, And sometimes, by the way, I know that sometimes animals sicken and there's no way of saving them. They're gonna pass away. I've had that experience, but I've saved a lot of my animals because I've gotten on it. When I realize something is wrong right away, I treat it. At least I try to treat it. And then, like I tell him, the worst thing is when an animal stops eating. If an animal stops eating, that's it. You can dose them all you want, and hopefully by the second or third day they'll start eating. But if they don't, that's it. They're yeah, they're gonna be gone pretty soon. But anyway, I hope you like this interview. I think it's fascinating because, and honestly, I was surprised because I was thinking, I wonder if she's had any taxi drivers say, "You want to go where?" No, I'm sorry, I can't go there. Like because there's sometimes I know that there's superstitions sometimes. Well, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something that maybe people are leery of going after dark. But the flip side of that is like, yeah, I'd be if there's a homeless contingent that this guy's telling her, I can't get off either. It's like, this is not because you're a tourist. I'd be in trouble myself. That right there tells you that sometimes it's just not a question of dealing with maybe with superstition or legends or ghost stories, or if that cemetery's got a bad reputation. It's like, no, it's like that. It's not the dead people, it's the live people. By the way, I'd like to point out that a lot of people, not a lot, but certain people that go to legend tripping and go to cemeteries, and I'm going to say more in rural areas, or not either older cemeteries or more rural cemeteries where you don't have police or anything. You have to be real careful when you go into these cemeteries. Besides the trespassing thing, forget the trespassing thing. You could stumble over a lot of things inside a cemetery. Homeless, people doing drugs, people doing spell work. You could come across a lot of weird stuff. But my point being, forget the ghost thing, the dead or whatever. Because, you always hear these stories of people having unusual encounters and ghostly encounters and all that in the cemetery. But which that thing about living is the ones you have to worry about. Yes. And in cemeteries, once upon a time, people were like, well, I'll take it back. There's always been a slice of occult beliefs that the work they do, whatever it is, their belief system or whatever, they require stuff from cemeteries, whether it's graveyard dirt, and in some cases, I hate to say it, body parts or heads or whatever. But that was like, I don't want to say it wasn't common, but it was like not out there. But nowadays it's not that, what's the word I'm looking for, underground. And people go there sometimes to do things they should. And I'm here talking again, I'm not talking about on a metaphysical plane, the danger of stumbling across somebody that's doing some type of invocation or something in a cemetery. I'm talking here strictly about your physical well-being. Plus the fact that that And some of these places, they dig those holes for a grave the day before. They got those backhoes and they'll have a hole. And if you're not watching where you're going or the lighting is bad, you could fall right into one. Yes. And sometimes people don't, or I've heard of people like tripping badly. They've got one of those flat tombstones and they bust their what because they just trip over it face first. I've heard of that too. And then there's always the next thing you know, police are there because somebody called it in that there's trespassers. And again, once upon a time, it wasn't such a big deal, but between people, they vandalize some of the graves, stuff that's stupid, really. I mean, some of the vandalization I've heard about is just for the sake of vandalizing it. And then there's certain graves that's why even you'll see where and this is incredible to think of, where the burial site of certain people, notorious people, I'm going to say, is kept hidden. And I'll give you, for instance, when, what was it, 1989? I think it was when they had the big thing in Matamoros where there was the med student, Mark Kilroy, was killed out there. And he was kidnapped basically from when he crossed over into like a spring break into Matamoros from Texas into Mexico, and he got kidnapped and he got sacrificed, and there was a cult out there and they were on this hacienda, whatever. That's another story. But anyway, the guy that was running this, that he was like a black, what they call a palero. He was a black magic practitioner of palero, which is Palomayombe, which is very dark, that had basically sacrificed him and a bunch of other people in horrific ways. I'm not even going to get into that at this point. Make a long story short, he was originally Cuban American. He was from Miami and he had gone to Mexico and was doing all these things. In the end, he has a shootout with police and he gets shot like 16 times. They do an autopsy, but they ship him back here to Miami. And they did a second autopsy and they confirmed everything, And by the way, he had one of his followers shoot him and his husband or boyfriend or whatever you want to call it. And the guy didn't want to. He goes, well, if you don't do this, things will go badly for you in hell. Hello. That tells you what. He was like 20 something, 25, 26. Well, and this is what's really funny, his family, which were into practitioners, was that overlap, considered themselves Catholic. And back in the 80s, there was only one Catholic cemetery in Miami, which was Our Lady of Charity. Was it Our Lady of Charity or Our Lady of Mercy? I'm sorry. Can't remember. One of the two. And after they shipped his body back, they kept the location of his burial site secret. And why, you may ask? Because they were afraid that there was going to be practitioners, followers, whatever you want to call, that would start either digging up the body or doing stuff around the grave or everything. And he's buried somewhere out there in that cemetery. And I think the only ones that probably know are the administrators, whoever keeps the records. But outside of that, obviously nobody knows exactly where he's buried out there in that cemetery because of that. Okay. And point being, back to the original, that sometimes going to the cemetery, you have to worry more about the living than the dead. And some of the people you meet out there, it's like, they're not always going to be kids running around just trying to scare each other. Like, sometimes you could meet people that, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit on the dark side. And that's just being kind. Believe me, I've seen a lot of different things that are found inside cemetery grounds. And that's a whole nother show. But anyway, I hope you like this interview with Tui Snider. You can visit her website again for links to the books, for the trip to Genoa in September, for anything that's going on with her. And of course, to sign up for her newsletter. And that's TuiSnider.com. And while you're at it, sign up for my newsletter on Substack. You can go to mppellicer.com. You'll find links there to everything, links to the podcast versions of any of the shows besides Stories of the Supernatural, Nightshade Diary, Supernatural Storytime, and even Eerie News. All of it you can find at MiamiGhostChronicles.com or mppellicer.com. On the Substack, I do more announcements as far as things that are coming up, and it's a hodgepodge of articles, old shows, new shows, videos, podcast versions, whatever you like. So please come back next week. I've got a lot of interesting people lined up, and we're already in season 16 of Stories of the Supernatural. And today I was looking at my calendar, and I can't believe that right now I'm about to go as far as scheduling guests into season 17 of Stories of the Supernatural. And I got a lot of great people lined up, great people. So come back. But in the meantime, thank you for being here today. Till next time.